Today we're making prawn toast with a lot more prawns and a lot less toast. Let's do it. So first up, and the most important part of the dish, is we make the prawn paste. Now, most recipes and most restaurants now use food processor, which simplifies the step a lot. But since we're doing a small portion for demonstration, we're going to go traditional by chopping it. Now, the traditional chopping method is not just for the camera. It actually yields a prawn toast with a different texture. You get a bit more of a bite of the prawns, a texture that's closer to a crab cake than a meatball. So if you have the time or you have the manpower, try this and experience the different texture. Then decide for yourself whether you want to use the food processor. Another thing to bear in mind is the optional aromatic vegetables, which often includes the scallion. This is normally added after the paste is formed. I personally like to add it at this stage. So A, we bruise the membranes a bit to release a lot more flavors, and B, the pectin in the scallion would help the paste bind better together. To mince it fine, I like to cut at 45 degrees on both sides before eventually cutting through the whole thing. Go. Perfect. And you go again. Now, once you're on your way to forming the paste, this is where the chopping method's fun begin, at least for me. We switch to the 2-knife method, and you go. And you alternate between this, the blades of the knives, and the backs of the knives. So you're cutting and pounding at the same time, maintaining the texture, yet forming the paste in the process. Getting there. Now the back of the knife. One front, one back. Both. And now you have pretty much a paste-like texture. Transfer everything to a mixing bowl. Now we season our paste first with salt, and to help everything bind together, we add some egg white. And these are the 2 mandatory ingredients to make the paste work. Everything else is optional. So if you're making it for the first time, don't sweat over all the other optional ingredients. But now that we've mentioned them, first up, a bit of soy sauce. And soy sauce and prawn, they just work so well together. Brings out the best natural flavors of the prawn. A bit of Shaoxing Wine, which is a very common liquor used in China for shellfish, brings a lot more umami to the table. The closest thing you can get to Shaoxing Wine in the Western supermarket would be dry sherry, which would work very well. But if not, don't sweat over it. Another shellfish best friend, white pepper. And to reinforce the wonderful flavors of the sesame that we'll add later, a bit of toasted sesame oil, but this is very overpowering, so a few drops. And lastly, one of my favorites for most seafood recipes, we're going to add a tiny bit of grated ginger, just to tame any potential unwanted fishiness from the prawn. As usual, Cassie's grater. That's plenty. Now we mix again to work everything in. Now once the liquid has mostly been absorbed by the paste, we add a generous amount of cornstarch to A, help them bind together, and B, help them bind to the toast, or whatever we use as a toast replacement. And now to really form the paste, you grab the mixture and you slam it continuously. This would really start to make everything sticky in the nicest possible way. Now, we introduce the other hero of the show, the bread. In this case, we have Japanese Panko, which is crustless, dried, coarse breadcrumb. If you ever had chicken katsu or any form of Japanese cutlet, you would have had panko. And this gives you a very crunchy, airy finish that's not overly oily, which is my primary complaint about most prawn toast. The white bread ends up soaking way too much fat, making the dish tasty but filling. This would prevent most of the oil absorption. So all we need to do is that we grab a plate or any platform, a ring mold, but you can shape it however you like, so don't sweat over the equipment. We add a very generous amount of panko, and you can add more than you think you need, because whatever doesn't stick would just come off. And to that, a bit of cornstarch. You give it a mix. Sure, now it's one even layer, and we introduce our prawn paste. Honestly, the smell of the Shaoxing wine really is incredible. And you really push it down to avoid any air pockets. Now, we carefully push, release the whole thing. Perfect. And we sprinkle the other side generously with white sesame, not toasted sesame. Bearing in mind, we're going to fry this whole thing, so the sesame will be toasted in the process. And you want to be very generous with the sesame seeds. Here, we've heated some neutral high smoke point oil, in this case sunflower oil, to about 180 degrees Celsius. And we're simply going to fry them once to get the golden color. Very carefully. Toast goes in. Beautiful. Look at that. Look at the color. Once it's had a bit of time, get the color. We check on the other side. Look at that. How beautiful is that? And the prawn paste, they cook quite quickly. So given the thickness and the size, once both sides turns golden, you know they're ready. And just for garnish, we're gonna throw in some head, some tail. Completely optional, of course. Perfect. And we just give it a couple of minutes to drain off the excess fat, and we can plate. Look at this beauty. We have, of course, head and the tail. And a bit of Chinese green for garnish. Completely optional, of course. And that's it. This is sesame prawn toast with lots of prawn and a tiny bit of toast.